Ephrem the Syrian was born around 306 AD in Nisibis, which is modern-day Nusaybin, Turkey, near the Syrian border. He lived during a time when the Roman Empire was transitioning from paganism to Christianity, and this change deeply influenced his work. Known primarily as a theologian, hymnographer, and writer, Ephrem's influence on Christian thought is vast. He was a prolific writer, and his works include biblical exegesis, hymns, poems, and sermons. His writings are particularly significant because they provide a window into the early Syriac Christian tradition, a branch of Christianity that often gets overshadowed by its Greek and Latin counterparts. But what sets Ephrem apart from other theologians of his time is not just the quantity of his work, but the depth of his spiritual insight. His hymns, in particular, are celebrated for their poetic beauty and theological richness. These hymns were not just for liturgical use, they were also a form of theological education, conveying complex ideas in a way that was accessible to the average Christian. Now let's turn our attention to apokatastasis. The term comes from the Greek word apokatastasis, meaning restoration or reconstitution. In Christian theology, it refers to the belief that all of creation will eventually be restored to its original pure state. This idea is often linked to the concept of universal salvation, the belief that in the end, all souls, even those condemned to hell, will be saved. This concept has roots in the writings of early Christian theologians like Origen, who lived in the 3rd century, just a generation before Ephraim. Origen's idea of apokatastasis was that eventually, after a period of purification, even the most sinful souls would return to God. However, this idea was controversial and was later condemned as heretical by the 5th Ecumenical Council in 553 AD. So, where does Ephraim fit into this? While Ephraim doesn't explicitly endorse the idea of universal salvation, his writings reflect a deep concern with the themes of divine mercy and the ultimate restoration of humanity. In his hymns and poems, Ephraim often emphasizes the healing and redemptive power of God's love, suggesting that no one is beyond the reach of divine grace. Ephraim's view on apokatastasis is nuanced. While he doesn't advocate for a universal salvation in the same way Origen does, his theology leaves room for hope. In his hymns, Ephraim often portrays the final judgment as a moment of both justice and mercy. For Ephraim, God's love is ultimately restorative, and while he acknowledges the reality of divine judgment, he also hints at the possibility that God's mercy might extend beyond the grave. In one of his hymns, Ephraim writes about the return of the prodigal son, a parable from the Gospel of Luke. He sees this story as a powerful symbol of God's willingness to forgive and restore even those who have strayed far from the path of righteousness. For Ephraim, the parable is not just about the repentance of the sinner, but also about the boundless mercy of the Father. This emphasis on mercy suggests that Ephraim might have been sympathetic to the idea that, in the end, God's love could triumph over all. However, he stops short of fully endorsing the notion that all will be saved, leaving his position on apokatastasis somewhat ambiguous. Ephraim's legacy is immense, especially within the Syriac Christian tradition. His hymns continue to be sung in Eastern Christian liturgies, and his writings are still studied for their spiritual and theological depth. As for apokatastasis, while the concept remains controversial within mainstream Christianity, it continues to inspire theological debate and reflection. In the end, Ephrem the Syrian offers us a vision of a God whose love is both just and merciful, a God who desires the restoration of all creation. Whether or not he fully embraced apokatastasis, Ephrem's writings invite us to ponder the mysteries of divine mercy and the ultimate fate of humanity. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into early Christian theology, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. And let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on universal salvation? Do you think Ephrem's vision of God's mercy leaves room for universal salvation? I'd love to hear your insights. See you next time. Take care of your soul.